Leaders, real life leaders.
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode, and we all need to hear today's message. Our topic today is how to grow leaders. How do you grow your leadership team, and how do you know who to promote, who to hire, and who to fire, and how to get the right people? So if you are not struggling with one of those things, then kudos to you. But I know that me and all of my friends that are CEOs have one or two areas that we really need to grow in. I don't know anyone who doesn't need to grow in those areas, to be honest. We have Scott Drake, and his website is JumpCoach.com. And he is really passionate about just helping people to accelerate your growth as a leader. So we want you to become more confident, a more modern leader in weeks and not years. That's kind of his slogan. So welcome, Scott.
Chantel, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate having me on.
Well, let's talk about, one of the things we like to talk about is just really practical ways. So not pie in the sky, but really practical ways. So give us what are some of the things that you've seen that people do that really do help grow their leadership in weeks and not years?
Yeah. So everybody wants to start with skills and style, right? They go, what's the right style of leadership, or what skills do I need to go develop? But the shortcut is really about the mindset, right? Excuse me. Great role players, they're the experts. They find the answers, right? They're good at solving problems. They're the ones who can get things done. And we often feel like when we're promoted into leadership, we're promoted because we were the experts and we can get things done. So we try to keep doing that. But the real shortcut is to say, my job as a leader is not to do things anymore. My job is to work through others to get things done. Right? It's not to do everything myself. It's not to have everything done my way. So it's really about this mindset shift of saying it is okay to not have the answers. It is okay to let your team do things in ways differently than you would, because ultimately you're trying to learn to work through others. So it's about mindset more than skills.
I love what you said when you just said that my job is to work through others to get things done. And it's funny because I feel like at one point, I had told everyone I'm writing a book called How to Delegate Everything But Sex. Because everyone would say to me, they're like, Chantel, you are literally the master delegator. Because I don't blow dry my own hair. I literally take it to the extreme on things that I delegate. But there's other things that I feel like I have given away. And then when there's a hole, like someone's not there, I will sometimes pick that hole up instead of focusing on, okay, I'm not going to pick that hole up. I'm going to focus all my energy on hiring someone to replace that role. So give me an example of things that you would say you've seen high-level leaders where instead of delegating that out, they're doing some of these things themselves.
So I think a big one, I come out of the tech world, and in the tech world, we do a lot of project work. We do a lot of, this quarter, we're working on these 3 projects. Next quarter, we're doing these 3 projects. The quarter after, we're doing another set of projects, right? And what I see, one of the areas that I see often is that the executive can't let go of decisions around projects, decisions around how things can work, decisions around I often see CEOs trying to solve $1,000 problems instead of $1 million problems. They want to get in the weeds because that's where they're comfortable. They want to get in the weeds because they feel like that's a way to kind of earn trust with their team sometimes. But what they're doing is they're, instead of letting their team do some of those things, they stay involved. So I think there's a level of strategic planning that I think executives have to stay in, but there's a level of product and implementation planning and some of those pieces where they need to get out of the way sometimes and just let the team run with things. And that's one of the areas I would say to a broader audience, implementation planning is one of the bigger places I see people stay involved if they need to back out sometimes.
So let's talk about you. One of the things that I believe, and you can kind of expand on that. But when you feel like you don't have the right person to delegate things to, that's like for me, is that you then end up taking some things back. So you might delegate it, they don't do a good job, and then you go, you know what, forget it, just give it back to me. And they keep picking that load back up. How do you change your mindset to do that? Or is it that you just have hired the wrong person and you need somebody else that can get the job done?
Sure. So again, it can be both, right? So one of the common things that I see is that there's two kinds of work that are common. There's what's called routine work, which requires that you can put processes around. It's more of a mechanistic management approach, right? Closing out your books every month. There's kind of a routine task that every business goes through every month, and you can put processes around how do I close out my books every month. Other processes or other things are more creative, right? They're not things they do all the time, or their ultimate result will be something that is more process centric. But those innovative projects, you often have to iterate on, right? You're not going to sit down day one and delegate to somebody and they're going to go be perfect with it and come back in 10 days with a perfect solution. It's often you have to say, here's the problem or here's the vision, right? Go work on this for 2 days and come back. And in 2 days, we've learned something, right? They've learned something, I've learned something. And now we can be more clear, right? So we're taking this cone of uncertainty and we're narrowing it down, but it takes iterations over 10 days or iterations over 10 weeks to really have thought through that problem well enough to be able to even delegate it well, right? So the burden of delegating perfectly from day one is virtually impossible for a leader to do. They have to accept that some of these projects, there's just going to be that back and forth. So they have to leave that back and forth, right? So I think that's one. I think the other side would be, do you have the wrong person, right? If the person can't think through the problem, right? If you can't say, here's the problem, how would you approach it? Or what's challenging about this? If they can't think through it, then they're probably the wrong person. Like if they don't have enough life experience or experience in the industry or the business to deal with that type of a problem, then they may be the wrong person to take that problem too. So then it's a matter of take the problem to other people and say, how would you tackle this, right? And that's how you can start to find the right people to delegate those problems too, is that they can think about the problem themselves without you having to feed everything into them.
So give us another example of someone, like, give us a story of someone who you said, okay, let's decide, like you have someone who you say, okay, should we give this person one more chance or just fire them? Talk about someone who's like, you have had problems. It's been weeks. You've done PIP reports. You've gone through different things. And so they kind of go like this. I know we've had people who they're performing well, then all of a sudden there's a dip. Then they're performing, then it's a dip, and it's performing and it's a dip. And you finally have to go like, okay, do I need to give this person another chance or just fire them?
It's hard to give you an example due to just basic courtesy and privacy. Mm-hmm. I have had situations, in the last few years where, I've had even some higher level people that I brought on expecting that they would be able to tackle some stuff, and they ended up not being able to. And after a year and 6-figure salaries, you're like, man, that was just totally wasted, and I've got to let this person go, right? I've been there, but I don't want to get too detailed. I don't want to be rude, right? But it does happen. I think the other thing, what I look at in that situation is, again, as I say, is this the right person for this challenge? Because most of the time, most people are capable and they're competent and they want to do great work, right? Most people don't show up at work all day just wanting to do terrible work and be lazy. Most people actually would like to do good work. It's just the challenges that are available to them in that position aren't the right challenges. So that's part of what I look at as I go, again, is this the right person for this challenge? And then do I have other challenges for this person? And if I don't, then you let them go. But if I do have other challenges or other things that they could do, then I potentially look to move them into that. So, and then one more thing I'll throw out there is that the challenge, what people find challenging changes, right? What was challenging to me last year is boring and old hat this year, right? So I may have been great last year. Like I may have been the up, because I was really challenged by what I was being asked to do. But then this year I'm doing the exact same job. It's not challenged to be anymore. Now I'm bored. So I'm going and finding new challenges, either a different job or at home or at a volunteer work or something like that. So as a leader, it's really about being able to match what is challenging to the person over time as they grow, because they're going to grow, they're going to change, they're going to want more challenges over time. So it's really, if you're seeing those ups and downs, the first place I look is I say, is this person still challenged by the work that I'm putting in front of them?
So let's talk about hiring right now, because, I think that is honestly, with my friends that we've been talking, that this is the most challenging season for hiring that we've ever experienced. The people who are coming in are of the lowest quality that are coming in to apply. And we're just not even seeing top talent come and apply. So what do you have to do if you're just like beating your head against the wall? You've gone in Indeed, you've gone in these different places, and you're not getting anyone that has any kind of caliber that you're looking for. Now what?
Yeah. So again, this is where it's interesting for me, because I've been in tech for 25 years, right? And we've been dealing with that in tech forever, right? That's just the state of the world for decades in the tech world, is that it's extremely competitive and there's a shortage of good workers, right? So what we've learned to do, and typically what I coach companies to do, is you've got to really ask yourself the hard questions of why would somebody want to work for you, right? Why would somebody want to join your cause or fight your cause? And a lot of these organizations they don't present themselves as anything other than, here is a job that pays X dollars an hour and has these perks. But people, that's just not enough anymore. And it's not been enough in tech for a long time, but it's becoming not enough in other industries, that you really have to be able to say, again, here are the types of challenges that I can put in front of you. Here's our purpose. You're a real estate company. It's great. You get to help people, find homes. That's a great thing. So you really have to sell the purpose and the mission of the organization more than you're selling the pay and the perks. You have to look again at fit and culture and some of those pieces, right? So there's really 4 factors around hiring. And the companies that struggle talk about, what do I need? What are the demands I'm going to put on somebody? They talk about, what can I pay in perks? The more sophisticated ones get into culture, but the best ones get into that intrinsic motivators. Why would somebody want to be there, right? Why would somebody want to show up every day and work there, other than getting, X dollars an hour in pay? And if you don't have answers for those questions, you're going to struggle to get people, you're going to struggle to keep people. And unfortunately, that's just the state of the world everywhere now.
Hey guys, I'm so excited. My new book, One Meal and a Tasting, is out now. And if you order the book on Amazon, just the regular paperback edition, if you go in and make a review, you will get the audio book for free. Send a copy of your receipt to questions@chantelrayway.com and you'll get the audio book right away. So would you say that, give me some examples of companies that you've said they've done this right? They've provided a great culture. They've got a good vision. They've got a good mission. They've really explained it well of why you should work here. Do you know any companies that you could name and kind of give those examples of why and how they've done it well?
Oh man, off the top of my head. The last company I was with was a company called ScholarRx. I think we did a really good job of setting ourselves apart. Again, our problem was, it was a good problem to have, which was, how do you better educate medical doctors, right? But that's, I think, a little bit of an unfair one, because it's, again, a lot of people would want to go fight that cause. But what we did from a hiring standpoint is we said, we don't need programmers. We need programmers who have some intrinsic motivation into medicine. Maybe their spouse is a doctor, their spouse is a nurse. They come from a family of doctors, but they didn't want to be a doctor. So we would go out and actually target people or seek out people who may have some target into the industry that can make it more interesting for them. I think there's trying a couple of examples that I can get into that are short. Man, off the top of my head, I wish I had prepared for that question.
What about Southwest? Well,
so Southwest is an interesting one.
Did a good job of that.
They do a really good job of culture and saying that we want to make this place fun, and that it's so that's really Southwest is no perks, all fun, right? And that's kind of what they hire for, and they look for people who fit that. Now, imagine if you're not a fun person, right? Or that's not interesting to you, right? They don't talk about to pay you get. They talk about how much fun it is, right? So it's really about selling the fun. Man, I wish I had prepared a couple of good examples on that one. That's the first time I've been asked that in quite a while. But yeah, no, it is. One company I'm working with now, they're accountants for nonprofits, so they really talk up the nonprofit element of it, right? So they say, look, who you're going to get to work with. Do you want to work with somebody whose purpose is just simply to maximize their revenue and maximize their profit, or do you want to work for people that are doing good? Right. So they do some stuff along that line, but I don't want them to all be altruistic. Now look at I think it's the Navy. They don't sell join the Navy. They sell adventure. Right. So that's a good one. That's not necessarily as altruistic. It's actually quite dangerous. But again, they're not selling the job. They're selling the intrinsic benefit that you get from doing the job, which is adventure. So it's really being able to look at organizations and say, what can we provide in an authentic way consistently that we can sell, that was going to attract people and keep them here. And that's really the fourth factor of hiring that I think a lot of companies need to get into.
Yeah. And I know that like for Southwest, I know that they are really big on, they do like a lot of spirit parties and chili cook-offs and Southwest rallies, like you said, and they really do cater to people who like to do fun and creative events. Like that's kind of part of their culture and that's what they're known for. The problem is when things like the pandemic comes and, you're in a different place where you can't have all those events or whatever, then people are like, well, wait, I'm getting paid this low amount of salary, but we're not doing those events anymore, so that's another piece to the pie. So one of the things that I love is that you really kind of talk about how you can really grow your leadership team. So give us some practical things and I'll share with you something that I do with my leadership team, and then you can give some other examples. So I think people kind of go, oh, I've got to bring this expensive speaker in, and spend like $10,000 to bring them in. And one of the things we do is we're very consistent where we send out, we call it a podcast of the week, and we send out one podcast. So we love like Craig Groeschel leadership podcast or John Maxwell. And we send everyone a video and a podcast and they listen to it. It's anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes long. It's every week. And then they write down the they write down what they got out of it, of how to share. And that has worked extremely well for us. Give us some more examples of like habits that people can make where they can say, okay, every week, every month, every year, whatever, this is what we do to consistently grow our leadership team.
Yeah. So I think the very first thing a leadership team needs to do is they need to get the same playbook and work from the same playbook. So one of my favorite things to do is to go into a leadership team and pull them aside in different ways and say, how do you know you're doing a good job as a leader? Right? What can you observe and monitor in your day-to-day world that says, I am doing a good job as a leader? Not as a role player, not as the accountant, not as a computer programmer, not as a real estate agent, but as the leader. How do I know I'm doing a good job? And what you'll see is that most people have different answers, or they don't have a good answer, which is kind of crazy. They'd be like going up to a basketball coach and say, how do you know you're a good basketball coach? And they don't have any idea of the rules of basketball, right? So the very first thing that we do, and we've actually got a free tool that's an assessment and a scorecard, that we broke leadership down. Basically, we took hundreds of books and courses and MBA level programs and broke them down and said, what are they trying to teach you about leadership? And it comes down to 4 goals and 9 jobs. And that scorecard will show people where they're doing well and where they're not, and where they have awareness and where they don't. Right. So what we recommend people, and that tool is free. What we recommend people do is that they go through that scorecard, and then every quarter or every month or whatever learning cycle they're on, right, pick one of these topics and then do what you're doing. Go find the podcast, but be more strategic about it. Right. Don't just grab whatever John Maxwell's team was talking about this quarter. Say, our team faces too many obstacles, right? They hit a point where they're working and they have to stop working because they don't have good decisions have already been made, right? So we're going to go solve that problem this month or this quarter. So it's really about being more strategic around what topics we're going to study, but it is doing things very similar to what you're already doing.
All right, give us one more example of what
One more
you
example of
do
things they
to
can
grow
do.
your leadership team.
I think the number one, we coach three parts, right? The mindset, the scorecard piece, which really helps people push into the nooks and crannies, right? And then the third piece is what we call wayfinding, which is being able to look and see where things are changing and then build my own learning around where things are changing, right? So within that wayfinding piece, there's 7 different exercises that people or teams can do to surface topics that they may want to study, right? Current challenges is very much the scorecard. Trend hunting is another one, right? Sit down every December and have all your team go out and spend an hour and say, go search for trends in whatever our industry is. And then let's come back and have a conversation about it. Let's have a conversation around maybe some stuff that we hadn't seen this year that all of a sudden is spiking up. And now, hey, maybe that's something that should influence our planning for 2022 or the next 2 or 3 years, right? So that's one, is that you can just do something like trend hunting. Self-assessments, right? Have everybody go do like a Myers-Briggs, or have everybody go to Strengths Finders and come back and talk about them. Self-reflection type of exercises. Have everybody go sit and do some thinking around their own personal values and then come back and see how those associate to the company values, right? So there's 7 different types of exercises that we've kind of put into that wayfinding piece that that companies can do either individually or as a team to help grow their team better.
I love what you really just said about creating a scorecard for leaders. And to be honest, we have done a great job of creating scorecards for our employees that do kind of the same things. Like, remember you talked about, okay, there's 2 different types of employees, right? There's someone who does a routine work, right? Mm-hmm. Those are easier to create those kind of scorecards for, right? Because it's like, did you complete the P&L by the 5th of the month? Did you, do this by this date? Was everything on the checklist completed in X amount of time? All those things are really easy to, not easy. I think creating scorecards are very difficult in general, but some jobs are easier. And I think that one of the areas that we've gone wrong is that we have some small metrics for our leaders, but it's almost like we have one metric, for our leader. Let's say it's recruiting a certain number of people, and that's it. And then we don't take into consideration the other things. And so I just think, like you said, having those more innovative projects, it's harder. And the higher leader it gets, it's hard to create those scorecards for them. So give me some examples of some actual scorecard things that you would write for, let's say someone was an HR person, like they were supposed to hire a certain number of people, or a recruiter for your company, or come up with something and give some specific items that would be on their scorecard.
Yeah. So from a leadership standpoint, right? Number one, I'll say this. For routine and mechanistic work, scorecards are really easy and they make sense. For innovative work and creative work, they're a little bit less useful, because how do you measure innovation, right? You measure X ideas were produced this year, or X problems were solved this year, but you can't put it on the team to say you are going to solve X problems every 6 months, right? It just doesn't work like that. That's just not how innovation works. That's not how creativity works, right? So you kind of have to, as a leader, accept that efficiency and predictability isn't always the thing that you should be measuring, right? So that's part of it. But to get to your question, what we suggest from a leadership standpoint is you have 4 goals, right? Are you getting results? What KPIs, what OKRs, whether OKRs are better for more innovative work, KPIs are better for more routine work, right? But what makes sense in your role? Do you have feedback loops that show you that you're getting the results that you seek, right? The second one is your team. Do you again have feedback loops that show you that your team is engaged at the level that you want them to be, right? Some teams are really big on employee engagement. Some teams are kind of like, there's so much turnover here anyway that all these investments in engagement don't make as much sense. What's the right goal for them? And do you have those feedback loops in place? There's 10 different ways to put feedback loops in place with your team. You've got to figure out what works for your organization. So it's really about, do they have feedback loops at all or do they not? That's part of the scorecard. Same thing with customers. Do you have feedback loops with your customers? Are you developing your team in a meaningful way? Again, what is your right goal level for that? But those are the 4 big pieces to measure: is results, employee enthusiasm, customer enthusiasm, and are you developing your people? Those are the 4 big ones for leadership.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Scott, tell listeners where they can find you and where they can follow you.
Yeah, sure. The best place to go is just JumpCoach.com. You can, from there, like I said, there's that free tool that's an assessment that I think is a really, really useful tool for leaders. And we've made it free on purpose because we want to really let people get in there and understand the full scope of that job. So definitely go to JumpCoach.com. And LinkedIn is the best place to follow me. Just look me up on LinkedIn. It's actually linked from JumpCoach. So follow me over there. And if there's anything I can do to help, please reach out.
Love it. Well, you guys stay tuned. We've got another episode coming up in just a few. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Real Life Leadership. If you'd like to get the show notes or access more resources, log on to reallifeleaders.com/podcast to get the show notes from this episode and any other resources we might have mentioned. And also, we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to review or rate this podcast on Apple Podcasts to help spread the word. And if you have any leadership questions you want answered, email podcast@reallifeleaders.com.